Colonel Stoddard, after 30 years service in the United States Air Force, you can imagine has a long litany of experience. I'm going to skip most of that, point out that he did his academic work at Oregon State University, and more importantly, for today's lecture, after some special training, he was assigned to Islamabad, Pakistan, in 1996 as a Defense Air Attaché until May 2000. He had a ringside seat. Some important developments there. The dismissal of two elected governments, one by constitutional means, the other a military coup that some of you are familiar with. He was there for the testing of nuclear weapons and a limited war between Pakistan and India. And we were just saying that Secretary of State Colin Powell is in India as we speak. That problem between Pakistan and India over Kashmir, we may touch on that. And the current developments of the Taliban to power in Pakistan. He knows personally those key players. They've been in his home, and we'll have him speak for some 15 minutes. We may have some other people on the guest here. So I'll try to have some questions and answers. And so, Colonel Stoddard.
Thanks, Paul. When I received a phone call last week asking me if I would be interested in coming over and talking, my wife, of course, said yes, and I go along with whatever she tells me to do. Especially now, once I retired, I realized I didn't retire from the military. There's a lot more to do at the house, and I've got to find a job so I can get some rest. This is really a great opportunity for me. The 4 years that Trish and I spent in Pakistan, and Trish was there for not quite 2.5 years, because Petros, why don't you come on up here and sit up front? Because of the evacuation of the embassy after the bombings in Tanzania and Kenya back in 1998, then we had adopted 2 babies from Pakistan, and Trish brought them back, and we decided to leave them for security reasons and all, and they were doing a great job of getting to know their grandparents and cousins and all. We just kept them here in the States the rest of that time. I'd like to introduce, many of you may know him, Petros Bakari is a good friend of Trish and ours. He's from Lahore, Pakistan. Petros was the branch president there in Lahore shortly after I got there, and then followed a year behind me when I was regional district president, and he was made the district president of Pakistan, the first local district president, and then was there for about a year, and then has been at BYU now for 2 years with his family, just completed his master's degree in educational leadership, and is working on a PhD now, and then we'll be going back to Pakistan probably in about 3 years. So he is the teacher of the church there, which is extremely important. I bring him up here also that he can answer some questions. At least you can see Petros, and he'll be around, and you can always call on him to get a perspective of Pakistan also. I'd like to talk this morning a little bit about the from my standpoint as a military attaché, the perspective that I see in Pakistan and what's playing right now in the scene there. Of course, I was very intimately familiar with all this for 4 years. The last year and a half, and I've been away from it. I left the Defense Intelligence Agency and went into the Defense Logistics Agency until my retirement. And so I haven't been that close to it, but I still have many friends in Pakistan, and I still hear from them. We still correspond. And so things have really changed a tremendous amount from the time that I left there in May of 2000. So I'd like to kind of give you a little bit of background, answer some questions, but I'd like to leave some time, quite a bit of time for questions, because I know that is really what you're interested in, is what's happening the other day, and I can give you my perspective on what is happening there. Let me first tell you what the defense attaché does, defense and air attaché. First off, as the defense attaché, I'm the senior military representative to the government of Pakistan and their military. I represented the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Defense Intelligence Agency, my own service, the U.S. Air Force, and whoever else that in the U.S. government that needs information, and I was the source, and my officers that worked with me were the source for that information. I was also the senior senior advisor, military advisor to the ambassador, and played a very important role in that, especially at the military coup. I don't like to call it a military coup, I like to call it a military dismissal of the government, but State Department like to call it a coup. Mainly because I felt it was the right thing to do. That's heresy on the part of, if you work in an embassy, especially in the military, that's heresy that you say that. But I felt for Pakistan, it was probably the right thing at the right time. It was a year late coming that I thought, but occurred the year before that. I also, as the defense attaché, myself and my other officers, I had 4 other officers who worked for me, our job was to collect intelligence, military intelligence on the country. We did this overtly, not covertly. There's other organizations that do that, I'm sure you're familiar with. But we work closely with those other organizations. And our job is to go out, ask questions, both military and to others, retired military, to correspondents, whoever else it may be, and find out what's happening within the military and their perspective. So that's basically what an attaché does. Generally, when I would come home, last time I was really in front of a group like this, not quite this large though, it was about a year and a half ago when I came back and I escorted I came back to the visit of General Mahmoud Ahmed, who was a friend of mine, who was the director of their Inter-Services Intelligence Agency, and they had responsibility over us as foreign attachés, and also they're kind of equivalent to our CIA. And that's where the policy for the Taliban in Afghanistan basically originates out of and is carried out of the ISI. But I came back for a visit that he had back here. And so during that time, I always go to the Defense Intelligence Agency analysis shop, and they lock me in this room, and they put all these analysts around me, and they ask me questions for 2 or 3 hours to get the perspective on what's happening in the country. And of course, we know a lot more than we report, because a lot of the things we learn, we just don't report. We don't think it's important. I'd like to start with the background. Pakistan, of course, was formed in 1947 out of South Asia, out of India, the subcontinent. It was formed as a homeland for Muslims. The subcontinent had a tremendous number of Muslims. In fact, before the British came there, it was Muslims that controlled the subcontinent. The Mughals, for about 400 or 500 years, 600 years, controlled that. Before that, of course, you had the Hindus that control it. So there's always been some animosity there between the Hindus and the Muslims. And as Britain was pulling out after the war and began to divide up, then they could see where there may be a potential problem along that line. At the time of partition, an interesting book, if you ever get an opportunity to read it, if you're interested, is Freedom at Midnight. And the reason they say that is because on 12 o'clock on the 15th of August, 1947, when partition occurred and India and Pakistan were created as independent states. As a result of that and the movement back and forth, Muslims into Pakistan and Hindus and Sikhs into India, there was a massacre of anywhere from 250,000 to 1 million people that died during that period of time. Trainloads of people that had crossed the border and no one would be alive on the train except to the side. Going either direction. It's a very, very tragic time in the history. The interesting aspect is they left the Christians and they left the Parsis alone. It was only between the hatred between the Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims that caused those massacres. And that all kind of leads into where Pakistan is. India picked up, they formed as a state, became a democracy, and is the largest democracy in the world. Some would question how strong it is, but the point lies in there's a billion people there in India, and it is a democracy. Pakistan, on the other hand, has been searching now for 54 years to find an identity of who they are. If I make a statement that's incorrect, Charles, then you can correct it later. But that's my perspective, is they're trying to figure out who they are. The country is almost 50%, a little bit less than 50% Punjabi, Punjabis are the dominant population. They dominate the government. They dominate everything, and it represents that. Pakistan, again, is made up of 4 states. You have the Sindh in the south, Punjab in the northwest, northeast. You have the Northwest Frontier Province in the northwest, and you have the Balochistan in the southeast, the southwest. The interesting aspect is none of them got along really before, and so now all of a sudden they're a country, and the only thing they really have in common is and I take it back to the time that it was also formed. They also had Bangladesh, which was East Pakistan, and of course, 71 they won their independence. Balochistan tried to break off in their own war about 73 or 74, but that was squashed. The Balochis do not like the Pashtuns, which the Taliban is. None of them really care for the Punjabis because they're so dominant and everything goes into there. The Sindhis are, in many cases, nomadic people out in the desert. And then you have people out in the northern areas, which are part of Kashmir and all. Charles is putting the map of Pakistan up there to show that. So as you see, they're trying to develop who they are, but they've never found that out. In that 54-year history, more than probably getting closer to 60% of the time has been under military rule. And the time that they've had their democracy, it really has not been a democracy. Even the time that we were there, when Benazir Bhutto's government was dismissed constitutionally, the government was a disaster. The country was about ready to collapse. Many of us within the embassy were using the term failed state. We never used it outside that, but we really felt that Pakistan was on the verge of being a failed state if it wasn't already. Then they had an election. Nawaz Sharif came in with the largest majority ever, had an opportunity to really change things around, and all they tried to do was solidify his own power. And as a result, came into conflict with the military and was later dismissed after he tried to fire the chief of army staff, which is the most powerful individual in the country and always has been. So you run into situations like that. The United States was one of the first countries to recognize Pakistan and always did. We used them in the 50s, especially during the Cold War, as listening posts. We had listening posts up in the northern areas that we could pick up communication and things from Russia. We used their air base out of Peshawar. That's where Gary Francis Powers took off in 1960-61 on his fateful mission, was out of there. So Pakistan has always been there for us when we've needed them, but what they say is that we've never been there when they have needed us. So the relationship between the U.S. and Pakistan has been up and down. When it's been in our best interest, then we have supported them, we've used them, and when it has not been in our interest, then we have turned our backs on them. That is Pakistan's perspective. That's what leads us kind of into what's happening today a little bit. Even more so in the 80s. During the 70s, after India tested the nuclear weapon, which was a disaster for them in 73, Pakistan began a great program of trying to develop their own nuclear weapon. We found this out in the mid-70s. There was a bill placed before Congress, an amendment to that bill that put sanctions on Pakistan as long as they were involved with their development of nuclear weapons. It wasn't, and that remained in place until about 1983, when the Afghan war was going on. The United States wanted to support the Mujahideen. The only way we could do that was to go through Pakistan, but because of the sanctions, we could not do that. So an amendment was presented and allowed the President the opportunity to state that if Pakistan had frozen their nuclear program, then it would not... then they could go ahead and waive the sanctions and provide the military aid and so forth they needed. That was passed. President Reagan, in fact, invoked that, and the United States became very seriously involved with supporting the Mujahideen. In fact, the amount of money that was pumped into Pakistan was third only behind Israel and Egypt for military sales during that period of time. It also helped pad the pockets of many of their leaders, which happens in the third world, unfortunately. So the U.S. played a very important role in using Pakistan during that period of time. Where Pakistan feels that the United States let them down was at the end of the Afghan War for two reasons. First off, after the end of the Afghan War, there was an event that occurred in Congress. Benazir Bhutto had been, after being in exile, came back after Zia had died in a plane crash. There was an assassination on him that killed our own U.S. ambassador and one Army general, U.S. Army general that was stationed in the country. Then they went back to democracy. Benazir Bhutto was elected. Her father had been the previous prime minister, and when Zia had taken over the government in 77, 78 time frame, then they had arrested Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and then I think it was 1978 they tried him and then executed him. And so she's going back with kind of a vendetta. That government didn't last that long before it was dismissed. But she came and talked to Congress. Before she went into Congress, the intelligence community took her aside and showed her the evidence that we had on the nuclear program. She went in and nuclear program. If she was elected out of her speech, that would have been one thing. That turned a lot of congressmen against Pakistan, and especially against Benazir. And so that kind of shows you where they go from there. Shortly after that, President Bush had to invoke the amendment again because they had in fact continued developing the nuclear program, and the sanctions were put back in. At that time, all the USAID programs ended, or at least were stopped, and they had just the ones that were in use were being terminated, and all foreign military sales were stopped. Those assets that they had in the country were frozen here, including the 3 P-3 aircraft, surveillance aircraft, and even more importantly, 26 F-16s. Pakistan didn't necessarily believe that was going to continue, so they went ahead and continued to pay for the F-16s for another 2.5 years before they realized what was going to happen. The United States, who unfortunately I think is very arrogant at times, we would never allow anybody to take our assets and keep our money. We did that. We did not give them their assets. We did not give them their money back. It wasn't until Pakistan was going to sue in our own courts, which they would have won, that the government finally settled that in about 1999 and paid them back their money, not all of it, but most of it, and then the other in the aid of food. So you can see the feelings that the Pakistanis have towards Americans. Pakistanis love Americans. I didn't meet a Pakistani that wouldn't have accepted the visa in the United States if we had given it to them. They may talk bad about the United States, but they would have taken the visa in a second. They would come to the United States because this is what they want. They want the freedom. They want the place to live where they can raise their families. They want the economic opportunities that are here. So there's a dichotomy that they're faced with. That kind of sets the stage of what's going on. The other way that we failed them after the end of the Afghan War is that we turned our backs once the Russians left and we left. And as a result of the vacuum in power in Afghanistan, and nobody knew what was going to happen. That left Pakistan with millions of refugees to take care of. It left an unstable government next door, and so the war may have stopped with Russia, the Soviet Union, but it did not end amongst the South. And it became a civil war now because you have so many different ethnic groups there. I guess, again, the Pathans or the Pashtuns are the majority group. That's what the Taliban is made up of. And it goes from there. The Taliban is kind of a creation of Pakistan itself. The Taliban is just a name picked out from Talib. Talib means religious student. And these students, many of them now are much older, in their 40s, but they were students at one point in time in the madrasas or religious schools of Pakistan. And so they came into Pakistan, into these religious schools. The more hardline or fundamentalist mullahs would teach them. They did not learn anything but the Quran. They would memorize the Quran in 2 years, front to back, in Arabic. Now, the Quran is taught in Arabic, but nobody speaks Arabic. So they really don't understand it. They can recite it, but they really don't understand what the Quran really says. So it's their own interpretation. The Taliban then went back into to Afghanistan, saw the problems there. It was really a land of, I guess maybe like old China was, where a land of landlords or warlords. And so as you cross from one area into the next area, the only way you could get through is to pay a road tax or some other type of thing. And everybody was armed. It was not a very pleasant environment. Pakistan's best interest was to have a stable Afghanistan. About the same time frame, the Central Asian republics became independent. They found oil and natural gas reserves there, and the shortest distance to warm water or to water to get it out would have been down through Afghanistan and Pakistan into along the Makran coast into the ocean area there, or even more importantly, across pipelines across Pakistan into India to provide there. So a lot of revenue would have come from that, and that's what Pakistan wanted. They needed that. It was essential for them. They wanted the trade routes out of there. In the same respect, you have Iran on the other side of the border, who wanted those trade routes, wanted the pipelines to come through Iran for revenue reasons. Also, if it's there, you can control whether or not people get oil. There's just a number of issues that can be brought out along that line. So the Taliban began to move into the Pushtin areas in south and Kandahar and the other areas, and began to disarm these warlords and take over. It was kind of not too hard to begin with because they were all Pushtins. And it wasn't until they started to move up towards Jalalabad and Kabul where they had more problems, because now they were facing the government, which was more of a coalition government made up of different ethnic groups. Initially, the Taliban appeared to be the right move for Afghanistan. Even the United States, in their embassy, we got along well with the Taliban. I had one army attaché that went in the country quite often, and he'd go in and meet with the Taliban in different places, in Herbert, in Kandahar, Kabul. They'd take him up to the front lines, and then the next day he'd get on a UN airplane and fly up to Mazar-e-Sharif or Shirbagan and get there with the Northern Alliance, and they'd take him to their front lines and he'd sit to their side. So he got along very well with both sides. The United States was independent, was not aligned with either side at the time, even though both sides wanted that. It wasn't until a little bit later, after they took Kabul in 97, fall 97, that they became more hardline. And I guess this is when the line was really drawn from the United States against the Taliban. Is more because of the treatment of women. And we have a large term I can't think of right now. A group within the United States where women's rights are very, very important around the world. And especially in that area. And the way that the Taliban treated the women were just atrocious. It was bad to begin with, culturally, but even worse the way they did. Because of the war and having gone on for so many years, there's so many widows, war widows, who were trying to raise families that were working in Kabul and other locations. And again, they had to stop working. They couldn't go to school. The daughters couldn't go to school. They couldn't go out in public unless they were with a male member of the family. And it just really was a tremendous burden upon them. But as a result, that's really, I think, what turned the tide against the Taliban. We tried to bring peace to the country. We tried to work with the Northern Alliance. We had several congressmen and senators that would come over that we would brief. They would go into Afghanistan, meet with both sides, but it really was just all in vain. 96, we had bin Laden was kicked out of Sudan and was invited into Pakistan or into Afghanistan, not by the Taliban initially, but by Golden Makhtiyar, who was Pushtin, but was aligned with the Northern Alliance and with the government. He was serving that. I don't remember the position he was in with the government at the time, but he brought him into Jalalabad, into his area. When the Taliban moved up and took over Jalalabad on their move in towards Kabul, then then bin Laden moved across into the Taliban area and became attached to the Taliban. What brought it even closer, more closely, I believe it was around 1998-99 time frame, is that it was either, I was under the impression it was his son married Mullah Omar, who was the head of Taliban's daughter. But then others say it was bin Laden himself that married one of the daughters who was 13, but I don't think so. I think it was bin Laden's son married, and 13 is no problem over there because that's, most of them get married around that age anyway, I guess, 13 to 14. But there's a relationship there between them. The other end, the interesting aspect that the Taliban is faced with now, not only because of that relationship that bin Laden has with Mullah Omar, but the Pushtun tradition, tribal traditions is that anyone that's in your house, you are obligated to provide a living for, food, shelter, clothing, and whatever else to protect them. In fact, the saying goes that if you kill someone's son or daughter, the safest place to be is in their own house, and that's what they'll do at times. They'll move right in the house with them, and they're obligated to take care of them because that's the tradition. However, once they leave the house, they'll be killed. And so that's kind of the background that the Taliban's using in many regards to not turn over bin Laden, is the fact he's a guest of theirs because of their tribal tradition, and they're obligated to go along with that. Now, how does this come into the dilemma that Pakistan is faced with? The Taliban basically was creation of Pakistan because of the madrasas coming through there. The ISI supported the Taliban. They saw the Taliban as the answer to their stability, and basically it has been pretty stable through that, throughout the entire region, other than the areas of the north where they've been fighting. And a few other instances within some of the tribal areas when they've gone in and taken sons to go fight for them. And they haven't liked that. But generally they've been more peaceful through those regions. Even to the point where Unocal had signed an agreement with the Taliban to bring the pipeline down through Herat, Kandahar, and on into into Pakistan that way. That didn't come about, of course, because more fighting and other political issues that were associated with that. So the ISI has created that. The ISI kept things going. The war in there was one in which Pakistan has supported the Taliban quite a bit. They'll deny that, but that in fact has been the case. Iran supports the Northern Alliance for a couple of reasons. First off is the Hazaras, which are Shiite Muslims, and also the Ismailis up further north, which are Shiite Muslims, are Shiites, and Iran being a Shiite country supports them. And the Pashtuns, the Taliban being more Sunni, and I believe it's the Wahhabi sect of Sunnism, which is more fundamentalist and radical, is what they are. So you've got that issue there. The dilemma that Pakistan is faced with now is that after the September 11th bombings, it was obvious with the things that you've been shown on TV, that bin Laden was involved. Hearing from a friend of mine who was my army attaché when I was first over there, and who's back over in Pakistan now in the intelligence arena, it's even more evident, the things that they can't show you, but he is in fact involved with this. So they knew something was going to occur. About that same time, just before the attack, then my friend General Mahmoud Ahmed, who was the head of the ISI, was on a visit to the United States when the attack occurred. So they took him to ground zero in both the Pentagon and New York. So when he went back to Pakistan, he had a different perspective of what had occurred. The other thing is that the ambassador went in and told him, you're either with us or you're against us. There's no in between. And we had him over a barrel. After the nuclear test of 98, the more sanctions were placed on them. The country lives off of economic aid from the World Bank and the IMF. Without that, it would collapse. In many cases, what we've done is just abstain from voting in order to not put our veto in, because if the United States vetoes, since we're the biggest contributor to those two, then it wouldn't occur. So what we do is just tell them we won't stand in the way of it. We won't vote for it necessarily, but won't stand in the way of the aid to them so they get their aid. Because of this, they knew they were over barrel. All we had to do was shut off the aid and they would collapse completely as a country. So they had no other alternative than to support the United States. This is a dilemma that Pakistan's faced with because of the fact there are a number of fundamentalist groups in the country. There are groups that were created by the government itself to fight their proxy war in Kashmir and are heavily armed, and they're fundamentalists. They believe in jihad, and this is the dilemma that the government is faced with. So they had no other alternative than to support the U.S. We see a lot of demonstrations. What you have to understand is the demonstrations are conducted by a very few percent of the population. About 10 to 15% of the population are more fundamentalists. The heavy demonstrations are in the northwest frontier province, in the Peshawar area, and the Quetta in Baluchistan. In that region, there have been demonstrations in Karachi a little bit, and some minor ones in Islamabad. It's not the majority. Talking with my friends in Pakistan over email, and they do not see a threat to the government there at this point in time. It carries on for a long period of time, it may be different. But there is that groundswell that's there that could, in fact, spread even greater if this continues on for a long period of time. The mullahs have a great influence on the people. Not all of the mullahs or the leaders or the religious leaders are fundamentalists. Many of them support the government, but the more outspoken ones are the fundamentalists, and that's what you see on TV is that environment there. I believe that the Pakistan government will continue to move along, and they will continue to support the United States. They will try their best to get the Taliban to give up bin Laden, but I'm not sure they're going to have that influence now that they once would have had. With that kind of background, what I'd like to do, we have probably another 15 minutes or so. Open it up for questions, and I will try to answer those questions to the best of my ability. If I can't, maybe Petros can interject and do that. But I'll entertain any questions. Yes. That's an interesting question. The reason they haven't done in the past is that Pakistan, unlike India, which basically took away the feudals, Pakistan never did. The feudals run that country. They're the politicians. It's in their best interest. They've done land reform before in the past, but they've gotten around it by giving land to their family members. They marry within the first cousins, or they marry within the families. The land stays in the family, the wealth stays in the family. And until the feudal system is broken, Pakistan can never get out of the place that they're in. I don't know whether the trust occurs with that or not, but it really is. It's the feudals that run it. Mashar Pervez, I knew him as General Pervez, that's what it goes by, but everybody sticks with the name Mashar. I felt that when he came in, he did not want to take over. He was forced, his hand was forced. When he was fired, and it was a power play between he and Nawaz Sharif, then I knew, and I told the DCM, Deputy Chief of Mission, who was the charge at the time, chief ambassador was out of the country. The interesting aspect is that I was having a dinner at my house that night for a farewell for one of my officers, and I had almost every senior officer, including Pervez, invited to my house that night. And there was about 25 or 30 of them that all said they were coming, and because of the dismissal of the government, nobody showed up. I guess I had 2 people show up out of it, something like that. But he really, I think, wants to do what's best for the country. And part of the reforms was getting rid of the political system as they knew it. They wanted to move it back down so that there would be elections held at the lowest level where people could run their own village. The interesting aspect is the money for the Punjab has a population of what, about 60 million, 70 million, something like that, somewhere around that. There's 140 million people in the country roughly, and around 50% of those are Punjab. The Punjab government controls all the money for all the little villages and everything. I mean, that's something that a county would do. And how can you do that? How can that money be put out there when there's that many people that have to be supported for the type of parliamentary system that they have there? So that was the first step, was to implement those local elections, and then move them up to the next level. And I think in December they were supposed to go on to the next level, and they're hoping by next year, I think it was, to finally go back and have the final elections. He realized the importance. He brought in some very powerful people. Their finance minister, Shaukat Aziz, I believe, was the vice president of Citicorp, and took a leave of absence for that to move in and take over the role as the finance minister. And they brought in some very high-powered Pakistanis from outside of Pakistan to help the government make these reforms. The point lies in the political parties mentioned here more than a year ago. They asked him about these elections. He said, no big deal, we get it back over with, just turn it back the way it was to begin with. I mean, the feudals had absolutely no reason at all to change. They have their own mullahs. The poverty of the people is just extraordinary. The people owe their livelihood, their living to the feudals. They live there on the land. They work the land. Their housing, their food, their shelter, everything, including the mullah, is controlled by that landlord. And so there's no reason for them to overthrow that government, because if they did, wherever they exist. So it has to come from higher up. So the question is whether the reforms will work or not. They will only work if the middle class is willing to put in. Even the business people are really hesitant. We've got very good friends of the business people over there out of Lahore, and we hear from them quite often. And they are one of the few families that are apolitical. They own a pharmaceutical company. They pay their taxes, which is really unusual because most people don't pay taxes. And the military has come in 2 or 3 or 4 times and audited their books, looking for things. And they're almost to the point where they were ready to just liquidate everything they had and just move all their assets out of the country and leave the country and go somewhere else. And that's the downside from that. The business people won't support the government, and the government doesn't have much hope of really changing economically. Yes. Another question back to you? Yes.
Can you comment on the validity of refugees in Afghanistan and how that impacts with Pakistan maybe passing the border or the situation where a lot of Afghan terrorists
the Pakistan border can only be controlled at the entry points. Due to the Khyber Pass, some of the other points there, the rest of it is so porous, they don't know where the lines are. And the batons are the same, both sides, whether Afghan or Pakistani, who knows the difference. And they control their own land. So it's really extremely tough to keep out this out of the border. It's extremely tough to do so. Part of historically, the camps have been people who just want to get out to fight and they come back. And it's generally tend to be apolitical to a certain extent. Also, they're made up of those who are anti-Taliban, who were forced out, but weren't against that. The Taliban pretty much during the time frame that I was there took care of a lot of that because they put their own agents into those camps and killed the anti-Taliban forces, or people who were outspoken in that. And so they pretty much stopped the opposition in many regards at those camps. More recently, I was reading yesterday in the international news, Islamabad, that there was a Taliban that came across the border of Shaman and demonstrated there peacefully, but they demonstrated there and then went back across the border afterwards. So it's very easy for them to infiltrate across the border and be extremely tough to shut it off. Yes?
What you were saying about the tribal tradition of keeping people in your house safe and protected, and I was wondering if that has anything to do with what you can offer to turn the gun over to a neutral third party, or how that fits into that?
I think it can, because the fact we've offered that before. You show us evidence and we'll try them within our own country. Well, we're not going to show them the type of evidence we do, because what they'll do is they'll have the names of the people that were used to get this information, and then bin Laden will be safe, and the sources that they use will dry up very quickly. I think it probably is a chance. They don't want to turn over Americans, but if they turn over a third country, then it would happen in there. But again, it's just some way that they're stalling the time. There's enough moderates within the Taliban. This has occurred even before this. When I was over there was a lot of moderates in the Taliban who did not necessarily go along with Mullah Omar. But he was the head, so they just kind of followed along. And then there's been some that were dismissed from the government because of their stance and all. So there's enough, I think, moderation in the Taliban that they can form eventually. And that's really the only choice that they'll have. And that's the big thing, is the next dilemma the Pakistan faces is if in fact they get rid of the Taliban government, you get bin Laden out of the country and the Al-Qaeda out of there, what happens to the country? You know, because the northern the Tajiks and the Uzbeks don't like the Pathans back and forth, but I think they can probably form a government that's a coalition government made up of all these forces, but you'd have to be the moderate portion of the Taliban. It could be the more fundamentalists. And again, remember that the Northern Alliance aren't liberal by any means. They're very conservative also. Maybe not so much as the Taliban, but they're a conservative fundamentalist group also. Yes.
Much has been covered in the news about the former king of Afghanistan.
Right.
How reasonable is that?
That's been going on for a number of years. While I was over there, they were doing that quite often. He's been in exile in Rome for 20 years or more now, something like that. There's still a lot of people that respect him and would like to see that. And really, I think what they're looking at is that because of his age, he's in his early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And he's probably not the one to lead the country, but by using him as the head type thing, and maybe able to form that coalition government and hold them all together a little bit and put a government around him. I don't think the king is the answer, but I think he is a great beginning point to form that, because people still respect the king. There's a lot of tradition. Yes. I don't see that aspect. So the question was that they had an interview here recently by one of bin Laden's family members out of Karachi, and they're wondering whether Pakistan will use the family members as a leverage to get to bin Laden himself. And I don't see that happening itself. What I do see is if in fact they can prove that they're involved with the Al-Qaeda organization, that they'll be arrested and detained that way. But I don't see it using that. In spite of the way they treat their females, their wives and daughters in those countries, Pakistan inclusive, they still have a pretty high regard for family. And so that's what's kind of ironic about what occurred with the bombing of the towers and the Pentagon. The attacks against that is that you had a lot of innocent women died, as well as men, and a lot of children were left homeless. So the fortunate thing, I guess, was as far as I know, there was no nurseries in those schools like there was in Oklahoma. And so it's interesting to see that the people accept that as a justification because of the way we've treated them or the Palestinians, or whatever. But I just don't see them using his family members themselves unless they can be shown that they are part of the Al-Qaeda organization. That would be, the question was, if they cannot get a coalition government to work, would it be feasible to divide the country up, the northern to the southern? It probably would, but remember, they're all Afghanis first. They may be different ethnic background, but they're all Afghanis. No one has defeated Afghanistan. And as much as they hate one another, as soon as a foreigner comes in, whether it be Iran, whether it be the British or whatever else, they all forget about their hatred and they all form together to take care of that enemy. And once the enemy is over, they go back to fighting again. I think that, and again, it's a diplomatic and a political situation they've got to face, but I think that if they go about it correctly, I think that's what they're trying to do now. They're already trying to work with some of the moderate Christians in the South and work with them. If they can do that, then I think they would be accepting to that. But people, don't like the Taliban, but they like, to a certain extent, the stability of the country. But I think if they can go in ahead of time and already have that broad-based support there to overthrow the Taliban itself, the hardliners, then I think it would work. If it doesn't, we just destroy all the Taliban, then there's going to be civil war, and I'm not sure what the response is from that. Yes.
Conflict in the Kashmir region has been going on for a long time.
54 years.
What in your opinion is Secretary Powell hoping to accomplish during this visit?
That's going to be a tough one. I think the only way that it's going to resolve itself is going to be at least 2 or 3 generations past from the time of partition, so that they may forget about some of the atrocities that were committed during that period of time and so forward. The interesting aspect is that India and Pakistan have more in common than Pakistan has with the Arab world. But the Pakistan wants to be part of it. And Pakistan hates Israel. Why do they hate Israel? Because the Arabs do. And they think that's what they have to be a good Muslim, they have to hate Israel. Well, they don't understand that the hatred between Israel and the Arabs, and the Jews and the Arabs, is not Muslim versus Jews. They're first cousins. It's over the birthright. Where it goes back to. I mean, they all come from Father Abraham. And Pakistan haven't figured that out. And so they hate they want to be Arab so bad that the Arabs don't want them. The only reason they may like them is the fact now that they have the Islamic bomb, as some would call it. And so it's interesting there. I think that what Powell is going to try to do is get both sides to kind of talk. And this is part of the other dilemma, is that they've been using the Taliban and those camps to train their fighters to go into Kashmir. And so now, if you shut all that down, do you also put a hindrance on the fighting in Kashmir? That's the dilemma they're faced with. And so it's going to be interesting to see what occurs there. Time is up. I appreciate this opportunity. Again, I'll be around.